Hello and welcome to another episode of the Reverse Mental Lab,
where we engage with thinkers from around the world to explore how leaders of today can learn from leaders of tomorrow.
You're back with your hosts. I'm Joshua.
And I'm Jens.
Hey guys, welcome back. So today we've got a kind of a different episode lined up for you. And when you first hear this topic, it might raise a few eyebrows and provoke some different thinking. But that's what we're all about at the Reverse Mental Lab. So what Jens and I are going to be discussing today is the topic around working on yourself and doing the hard work. Enjoy the episode. Hey Jens, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm great. I'm so looking forward to this topic. It will be fun. For those who are listening, we have already spent 50 minutes discussing it, and we should have recorded maybe it because I went a little nuts on that topic. But let's do it.
Let's do it. And like Ian said before we got recording, and like he mentioned, we've been chatting for a bit of time, and Ian's used the word fired up. So I've definitely got to be on my toes with this one because he's probably going to throw a few curveballs in and some spanners in the works. So Jens, maybe to kick off the thing and the discussion for today is, when you first heard the topic, what is the first thing that popped to mind?
Let's just repeat it for everyone. Working on yourself is one of the hardest things ever. And I think it's so incredibly important to do that. So get shit done, guys. But that's just a starting point. So when I was listening to this, when you mentioned that topic, because for those who are listening, Joshua always comes up with the great topics. I'm just doing the riff on it. So first thing I was thinking is like, yes, this is a topic which everyone needs to listen to, because I've seen it it's more than 20 years. I'm 40 years old. Let's say the last 35 years, maybe that's a little too much. The last 30 years, I've seen it over and over again that people, individuals, are saying they want to be whatever they want to be and doing literally nothing to get there because it's too hard. I need to work a little bit more than I'm used to. I need to do this. And that goes into sports, that goes into everything. And specifically on a personal development perspective and career perspective, you need to crank out the things. That means you need to get shit done. If you don't do it, it's not going to happen. So don't wonder why some people are accelerating and some not. That always means the person who is accelerating is putting in way more effort and passion into the development than everyone else. And sometimes it's just the 5% more than everyone else that gives you a head start. And I've seen it over and over and over again. If you do this consistently over your whole life, you're always more successful than anyone else. That's just the starting point from my riff.
Yeah, lots to unpack there, Jens. And I'm going to just double click on one word quickly, and it's the word effort. And we've touched on it in different conversations, but the reason I'm coming back to it in this conversation is because I think sometimes when people hear the word effort is that they think that, you need to be very conscious around what you're spending your time on. You need to be dedicated. You need to show desire. You need to have ambition. You need to put in the long hours. But I think one of the best things that I've heard when thinking about this topic about doing the hard work is around picking the right questions to ask and picking the right things to actually focus on. Because sometimes I think when you hear the topic around working on yourself, you can maybe listening to this and sitting there and say, hey, but I do work on myself. I go and exercise, I go to gym, or I ask the right questions. I make time for my family, all of those types of things. But are you actually asking yourself the right questions? And how do you go about doing that? How do you actually evaluate what you're learning, what risks you're taking, why you should be taking those risks? And maybe also another curveball to think about is, are you having fun? Because I think sometimes when you think about things, you may be putting a large amount of effort in, but you're not having fun. And maybe if you just change one thing, ask a different question, connect with a different person, you can potentially do a lot more work and a lot more good work, and have fun at the same time.
100%. And it's just double clicking on the fun part. You need to enjoy the process of doing it, not the outcome. So if you take myself, I have had an amazing career in the corporate world, starting on construction side, ending up as global head of innovation for one of the biggest brands out there. And I've had fun along the way every day. I mean, not every day, but throughout, I had fun in the personal development steps. And now running my businesses, it's the same way. I'm spending a lot of effort and a lot of passion into what I'm doing right now, but I enjoy every single minute of it. Yes, I'm exhausted in days. Yes, I work maybe a lot of hours in the moment because I'm focusing on a couple of things to get them out of the door, but it's fun. It's every piece of it is fun and enjoyment. And then I want to get back towards the effort. I think it's not about, like you said, it's not about spending a lot of hours and cranking out the hours. It's more about how can you be productive, because I've seen it with a lot of people over time, people I coached or people I worked with. Like, yes, they're spending a lot of hours inside the office, if we just take that example, but I can do, let's not talk about me, but you could have done, or they could have done the same output in maybe an hour focused work, productivity. And that's I think one of the parts when you go into personal development. What is the one thing that brings you forward in your personal development? And spend 60 minutes on a day, 60 minutes per day productively on bringing that forward. So what are you doing right now to bring that forward? So for example, what I do is 60 minutes per day on creating profit. What are the things in my businesses I spend per day, 60 minutes, that will create profit going forward? And if you do this every day, your profit will compound over time. And it's not about, hey, I'm learning about something new. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing research. It's about what you're putting in that will create profit going forward. And that's the same thinking from a personal development. What are you doing right now that advance the ball for you tomorrow? And then what do you do tomorrow that advance the ball for the next day? So it's this productivity thinking, which is not reading, not researching. It's really output. And I think that's on a personal level. If we just take personal development as a part, it's like, what do you write down to explore what you're thinking? This daily journaling or whatever it is. What are you doing per day that advance your way of thinking, that gets you to the next level? And that can be a conversation like we have, personally, not recording, or it can be a mentorship relationship, whatever it can be. But really putting in the work is so necessary to do this, because a lot of people are just sitting in front of the TV and watching Netflix. I was just laughing yesterday with a guy. I'm kind of coaching where we said, hey, I'm not watching TV. I'm sitting in the evening in front of the TV, but I'm not watching it. I'm sitting there with my laptop working it just because I want to sit next to my wife and she's watching TV. She's killing me every evening. You can imagine that. But in the end, that's the time where I do the other stuff that's not too important, where I don't focus, but it needs to be done.
Yeah, and so sort of to maybe expand and take those elements that you've discussed a bit further, Jens, is LinkedIn put out a great tweet, and it's sort of cascaded into a number of different areas, and different people at different stages of their career have reflected on this question that they asked. And the question that LinkedIn asked in the tweet was, what advice would you give your 20-year younger self? Yeah. And I think that, some young listeners may be listening to this and you may not be 20 years old yet. So we won't ask you to answer that question. But Jens and I are in the fortunate position that we can reflect on that, and we can reflect on the situation. And 20 years is a long time. And you've just highlighted a number of examples of how things can compound. So if you take your TV example and not watching TV in the evenings, if you think about that in a simple standpoint of every day, so you've got let's take a working week, traditional working week, 5 days of the week. For 5 hours, you may watch TV, so an hour every evening. But now if you take that and you rather read a book, or you connect with someone outside of that, or you watch a webinar, or you watch a TED Talk, and you then reflect on that learning, it's often compounding through simple stages like that can advance yourself dramatically over a short period of time. And you think about that over 20 years, that's a significant amount of time. So the way that I like to think about it is, short-term pain versus longer-term gain. And I don't like the word pain because I honestly don't think that by making sacrifices, you are not going to have fun. So if we look at myself, for example, I've made a lot of sacrifices in terms of how I've changed or what I've prioritized over others. And I think one of the key things that I will reflect on is how would I make that more sustainable? And what I mean by that is how can you actually have more fun and enjoy those steps that you're taking so that it doesn't just seem like you're making a sacrifice. Because I honestly, truly believe that, yes, there were sacrifices, but I had a tremendous amount of fun. I met some different people inside of that space. And over the longer term, that's made me a better person. It's made me richer in terms of what I can bring to the table from a value and a discussion perspective. But it's also helped me in my own development. It's shown me what to do and what not to do as well.
Yeah. For me, it's lifestyle choice. You can create your lifestyle. Like yesterday, which you have seen it because we have been on the call afterwards. I was running in my lunch break, and because I wasn't able to do it in the morning, which I normally do in the morning, and it's just this possibility to do things whenever you want to do it. I mean, that's now an entrepreneurial life. That's maybe not something for everyone, but it's more about doing things with a choice and with incentives behind it. So when you want to grow as a person, you need to be focused on what do you want to develop forward, which means, first of all, you need to step back and understand where you want to be, or at least have a guess of where you want to be. Because some people are chasing something which they will never achieve, or which they don't make them happy. And I think that's something, as part of working on yourself and working hard, is also understanding of what are the things you should be working hard on. And I just see it with a lot of people. That's also not what they're after. They're just living from day in, day out, but it's not really, they don't have anything to strive to, and then wondering why they're not successful in business. And for me, it's not about being successful in business. For me, it's more about, if you want to be successful in business, then you need to put in the hard work. If you want to be a successful sports person, you need to work hard on that. If you want to be a successful dad, you need to work hard on that. I think it's in all parts of your life. That's why I always say lifestyle choices. Just take myself as an example. I have always number 1, number 2, and number 3 priorities in my life, which is total life. It's not work life and personal life. There was so family is always first. At least most of the time, but then it's either sport or business. And I've had a lot of time where sport was number 1. So I was putting my triathlon training and the sport on top of everything else, sometimes even above family. And within the last year, and that has nothing to do with COVID or the pandemic, it's more because of my business, and I want to really bring my business into a different direction and building something that's huge in 10 years from now, which maybe nobody will get right now. I have decided that I will step down, which means stepping down from a sports perspective and focus on work. So now it's family, work, sport. And that means, like today, family demanded that I can't go out swimming in the morning because my little one was angry on me. That meant, okay, I will not do this. I will spend the hour with her and taking time to have a conversation with her and spending more time than I would normally do in the morning on a work day. And then I skip sport and go work. Before that, I would have done, I skip work, and I push the work a little bit back and do the sport first. And it's just a lifestyle choice you need to have. What are your priorities and what do you want to work hard on? It will be different in 2 months from now or next week when I'm on holiday. The sport will be higher up than the work. It's just what are the different phases and how do you do that in a productive way for yourself and work hard on it?
So here's an idea as while you've been speaking, Jens, in the stories that you've been sharing, it's great. And I think, as a younger thinker in this situation there are a lot of lessons that I can take out of that. And I think I would encourage other young thinkers to think about the points that Jens mentioned. And the first one is around lifestyle. So how do we approach things with a lifestyle mentality? Because sometimes I think we've become hyper focused and we really become super dedicated and we have a very strong desire to achieve something. And we would prioritize it over everything else. And that is fine. But what does that mean from a lifestyle perspective? And how do you think about that in different time frames? So you may prioritize it so here's a case in point is you may prioritize that you have your training for an Ironman event that you've got coming up in 6 months' time. But at the same time, you may need to prioritize your development on your work front. You've got a course that you need to complete so that you can be better suited for a candidate position going forward. That will then lead you to not be able to prioritize other elements inside of your life. And I think that the key element inside of that is approaching things with a holistic lifestyle and understanding that everything is connected, because far too often, and I don't like the word lifestyle balance or work-life balance, is because I fundamentally don't believe that there is such a word as balance inside of that. I think that balance will never be 50-50. It might be 70-30 or 80-20 or 60-40, whichever way you want to look at it. You will always shift and prioritize different things based on what is in the here and now and also where you are wanting to go. And I think that as young thinkers, what I referenced in a blog that I wrote last night is around this instant gratification nature that young people in particular have become very demanding around. So, and if you think why that's been driven, and that potentially means that we don't spend time asking the hard questions because we're always wanting things right here, right now. We don't actually think about what that means in 5 years' time. So, for example, if you make a purchase on something now, and I'll use something, where you spend $5,000 on something here now, and what does that mean in 5 years' time? Is that going to help you do your work better inside of this space, which means that your return over a 5-year period could be far more advanced than the initial $5,000 investment? Or is it better to go and put that $5,000 than buying an item into a stock on the stock exchange or into Ethereum inside of the crypto world? And what does that look like going forward? And I think that instant gratification, and something to think about and reflect on, is have younger thinkers rather prioritize instant gratification than lifestyle choices over the longer term? And what does that mean around actually sitting and doing the hard work with some of those bigger questions?
Yeah. Agreed. This long-term perspective is super important. And if we go back to the post on LinkedIn with the 20 years younger self, one topic was also action, taking action. So a lot of people are just talking and thinking, yeah, I would love to do this. I would love to do this. If you want to do a triathlon, go out there and do it. It's not going to happen if we just take my sport endeavors. I mean, you need to take a choice and then off you go. But right now, so if you want to have a huge career, there's only one way to do that, which is moving your ass and get things done. And really understanding what are the different things on how you can make a career inside an organization. It's super, super simple. If you go to the simplest perspective is deliver 5% more than everyone else and build relationships with the people above you. That's the only way and the fastest way how you can make a career. That's how I did it. Literally. I built relationships in a network organization, so that it was not just because of my career development. I was truly interested into the people, but with the understanding that this person will enable me to grow. This person will enable me to grow. So that's what everyone can do. And how many people do that? Literally a few only. That's why they're advancing. And if you then on top of that deliver 5% more than everyone else and faster, you will win. If you do this consistently over 10 years, you will have like 5-6 steps on the career ladder. That's fairly easy. It sounds easy, I know, but I just did it like this. It's super simple, but it means putting that in. That means sitting maybe five minutes longer in the evening and cranking out the 5% if that is needed.
Yeah, and I think, something that again, Jens, just to build off that point around doing the work, and I'm going to ask us both to answer this question now, but just building off the doing the work part is sometimes I think we undervalue just that, the action piece of things, because that means that we would rather prioritize doing something over it rather than by just sitting down for an extra 5 minutes and writing down what you learned in a specific meeting, or what did you do wrong in this situation that you learned from so that you can correct it next time. And I think when you think about that, it's almost those small compounding factors, like we mentioned at the start of this recording, in terms of thinking about a 5-year period versus a 20-year period, or a 5-minute period in a 20-year period. That's a significant amount of time. And my maths brain is not working today, so I'm not going to try and compute 5 minutes into 20 years in terms of to give you a figure. But you can go and do that on a calculator in terms of what that would look like and the amount of time that would actually compound into over a 20-year period and the potential learnings that you can have from that. But I'm just going to ask us to both sort of apply our minds to this question on the spot, Jens. Is we've chatted a lot about the importance of doing the work, why it's important to ask those hard questions, why it's important to prioritize different things at different stages of your career, and also to evaluate where you want to go in this journey and to be more vested in sort of the process of learning through time. So if we say from ourselves, and we've spoken about personal perspectives today, but how can you do that as an individual? How can you actually do the hard work? And what does that mean for a longer term perspective?
The how is, for me, it's the easiest question. Just do it. No, but the how for me is linked to the why. So that's maybe important to say. It's like if we just link that to the action point, if just action without the direction is not going to help you anywhere. So it's the why is important. So you want to have a career, then you need to focus on that. You want to build your own business, then you need to focus on that. You want to run a marathon, then you need to focus on that and do step by step towards that direction. But the how is really, and if we go back into my 20 years, what I would tell my 20 years is, I was 20 literally at that time. What I would tell myself is build a system, because that's what I haven't done. And maybe I wasn't able to understand it at that time because I was still working on construction sites. But it's like building the system I have now built up and even have in mind going forward. I could have done pieces of that literally over the last 20 years and imagine what that would be. So it's really, how do you do this? And how do you take actions on topics every day? But what is the reason of you doing that? If you want to have a career, what are the actions you do towards that direction, and what will advance you to be there? And how do you build this into a system so that, hey, I'm maybe not reaching, because some people go too narrow. They say, I want to be the CEO of that company, or I want to be the leader in that company on that position. And that's maybe not the possibility to get to that point, because there are a lot of obstacles which will not enable you to get there. But if you just, like I did once a mentor session with one of my mentors where we mapped out the whole ecosystem of the company, of the very large company I was working in, with all the different companies inside of that company. And then we did a mapping, what are the different positions which I would have fun with doing, instead of saying, hey, I want to be the sales guy, I want to be this guy. We mapped all different positions and all different opportunities to get to that position, which gave me a systematic way of understanding it. So I could have different avenues to be successful in my life. And that's what I mean with the system. It's like right now I work on the different systems of my businesses and how they all interlink with each other, but all of them are kind of working towards the right direction from a long-term perspective. And that's for me, the linking the why with the how. If we just take the example of my online course, which will launch tomorrow or today. So it is already launched if you listen to this. So this is just a tiny piece of that system. And I was working hard the last weeks to get it done. So I was cranking out hours and a lot of effort in getting that done. But it's still a tiny piece of the total system I'm building, or I have built already. And I think that's a bit where it is important for people to understand the how is literally, because for me it's just getting that thing done and focus the 60 minutes or whatever it is per day on getting that thing done. If that means you want to run a marathon in half a year, that means you should go out running 60 minutes per day and stretching and all of the stuff that helps you to advance to get there. If you want to build a business, then okay, what are the different topics that get you there? And it's really system again. Even if we take the running example, system is not just running, it's stretching, it's doing drills, it's doing all the other things around that enable you to do that.
Yeah, and I think, Jens, while you were telling that story and sharing your views, is the one thing that popped into my head was around people don't often see the hard work and it's not always visible. And if you think about that system that you're talking about, not many people think in that way and understand that they need to do all of these things to precede the actual outcome. And I think if you think about that from a young thinker's perspective, is people don't spend enough time doing the hard work because they want to rather do things that can be seen. And so if you think about a simple strategy, for example, is actually taking the time to map out where you would like to be. And one of the biggest things that I would encourage people to think about is have a broad plan, but how you get from A to B, don't let that be dictated by the map. And I think, that's a big thing to reflect on, is young thinkers that may be hearing this and, work on yourself, doing the hard work. You may think, hey, this episode's not really for me. And if you've got this far in the episode, massive thanks for listening. But the biggest takeaway for me in reflecting on this is, I think sometimes because of society, we are put into this box and we need to say, if you want to be successful, you must do X, Y, and Z. And it's almost like the stage plan or the stage model that you follow the aspirations of other people that have walked the journey that you want to walk. But how you'd go about doing that, for me, is that first and foremost, you really need to be comfortable with yourself. And I think this goes back to the individuality and, being comfortable with who you are as a person. And that if you're comfortable as who you are as a person, your how and your why will then start to be unlocked. Because my journey is never going to be the same as a person that left school at the same time as me, that may want to have this or have the same aspirations as something that I would like to do. And also the other elements is around, if you're comfortable with yourself, you will also find yourself having so much more fun with what you're doing, which will make the hard work seem like the easy work at the end of the day. And I think that's really, really fundamental. And again, I think that sometimes when we think about society, is this instant gratification culture has now almost like pushed that to an extreme where people are really not doing the hard work. And I think that if we can look to unlock that and enable people to think about that, and also leaders of today, how can you encourage the young thinkers on your team to spend time with doing the hard work? And to, like Jens mentioned, is if you're a manager, how can you go and spend an extra hour a month with a young thinker, helping them map out their career trajectory, looking at different options, not just the one option that they've got in front of them. Because as a mentor once said to me is, you need to create an environment where people can do their best work. And that best work might just be spending 10 minutes a month with a young thinker and prompting them to ask the hard questions of themselves.
Yeah, super important. I think that's the perfect. I could talk about these topics like 10 hours more, and I was just digging more into things. But I think it's we're now on a stage, and you summarized it so well that we should close close this episode, because I think we can add more into the other episodes on these topics. I agree 100% with you. It's all about where you want to be and finding yourself. And that's maybe the last thing from my side, is working on yourself. And one of our mutual friends is always saying that you need to work on your business, not in your business. That's the same thing for yourself. You need to work on yourself, understanding, taking a step back and seeing yourself from an external perspective. But important, and that's the last nugget, don't compare yourself with others. Compare yourself with yourself. So how did you advance to yourself yesterday, last year, 5 years, 20 years. That's way more important than, hey, how did you advance to the other person on Instagram or whatever you look into? It's super important just focusing onto yourself. That's it from my side.
Super wrap up, Jens. I'm not going to add anything more other than to say thanks to the listeners that made it this far in the episode and have been supporting our journey so far. Wherever you're listening to this, wherever we're finding you invading your personal space in this podcast setting, we really value your time, and hopefully we've unlocked some different thinking for you today. And as Jens said, both him and I have got a lot of other avenues that we'd like to take this discussion, and we'll do that in the coming episodes. So Jens, great to have recorded again with you today, and we'll see you soon.
Well, it's a pleasure, Joshua. See ya.
Thanks for listening and joining us on the journey that is the Reverse Mental Lab. If anything fascinated you in the discussion that we had today, you're welcome to set up a 15-minute coffee chat with us. Our emails are in the show notes, and you can also connect with us on our website, thexyzplayground.com.